Welcome back. And in this episode, it's all about training, where we talk about 3 best practices to improve training in your dealership.
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Welcome back. And in this episode, we're talking about training. Training is one of those important key activities that your dealership needs in order to produce consistent, reliable employee performance across the spread of your operations. Training isn't easy. Training is actually something that is difficult for a lot of dealerships. It's a rare dealership that finds training easy. And one of the things about training is everyone thinks that their training and their training processes are better than their employees actually think they are. It's something that we have to constantly work at in our dealerships. And in this episode, we're going to talk about 3 best practices to make your training better. Training is one of those important ingredients that you need to be able to scale your business. It allows you to bring all of your employees up to a certain expected standard of performance. And instead of relying exclusively on their background experience, what they learned at other dealerships, to make them truly part of your own operation. Without that training element, they are a product of wherever they came from. Bad habits included, bad procedures included, and they're not truly at that point in time your employee. They're working for you, but they are not working in a way that fits the procedures and the policies and the operations that make your business unique. It's such an important element for deriving consistent performance. So if your business, if your dealership, like so many of them, consistently has problems coming up, employees making errors, problems with operations, training is got to be part of the solution. So now, how do we make training better? The first best practice is do a needs analysis. So that needs analysis is something where you look at every single job within your dealership, every single position, and look at what training is required to be able to perform the job. Now, there's going to be 2 sides of that needs analysis. There are training requirements that are driven by regulatory requirements, compliance needs. And so this is stuff like your OSHA training requirements. So if you've got a service department, you probably have a hazards communications training requirement. You got to train HAZCOM. You got to train HAZCOM annually. It's required by law, and it's driven by a compliance need. It might be sales licensing. So when you bring a new salesperson on board, in states that require it, you have to get your salesperson licensed. And there is a test, there's a training requirement that goes along with getting that employee ready. That's a regulatory requirement. It might also be stuff that is a regulatory requirement while the training itself is optional. There is no training requirement. The performance is required. So record retention would be an example, or employee compliance training on the Truth in Lending Act, making sure that your closings are done correctly, stuff like that. Those are still regulatory requirements. You want to make sure that everyone is performing at the same level. That's one side of our needs analysis. But the other side, probably the more important side overall, is your business needs. This is where, in order to bring your employees up to a certain level of performance, you need to provide them training. We tend to overemphasize sales training. Sales training is important. You want to make sure that your sales personnel are conducting their sales activities the way you want to, your business's unique approach to sales, whatever niche you occupy. But there's a whole bunch of other people in your business that need training ancillary to that. Customer service training for anyone that is customer facing, um, phone skills for anyone that answers the phone, vehicle marketing training so that your recon personnel, your lot techs, everyone that has a role in the presentation of your product to your customers is playing from the same sheet of music. And then there might be just some more mundane topics, but still important to your business, like security and safety training and topics like that. Do that needs analysis. Map those needs out for every single position, because that can then drive your training strategy overall. The second best practice now is documentation. A little bit of documentation can go a long way. In some ways, if you don't document the training, did it really happen? So the first simple part of training documentation is having a signature sheet, capturing the attendance there, make everyone sign by their name, make sure it lists the date and time of training and the topics covered. And then I also recommend going a little bit beyond that. For whoever is teaching the training session, have some learning objectives written out. They can be simple, but identifying the topics that need to be taught in the course of the training. So for this, perhaps phone skills training session, these are the things that we need to make sure everyone learns in the course of the session. Document some learning objectives, and then maintain a training file so you can see what you've done over time and identify then additional people that come on board that need that training or whose performance is lacking so that they can get in on the next session, and have that as an ongoing process. Training is a process. It's not this like one-time event and we do our training and we're good to go. We have to think about it as an incremental process of employee performance improvement. And then the third best practice, and the one that often gets missed, is evaluate the results. We do training to get specific performance improvements out of our employees. So conduct a training and see how your employee performance responds as a result. Was it effective? Are you on the right track? There's lots of different ways to do that. One of them is just as a manager, as an owner, as a dealer, observe your employees and see how things change or not change to identify the effectiveness of your training. You can also do things, for example, with customer service training or sales training, customer service satisfaction surveys before and after training, and see if your training interventions are producing a change in results. But with these three simple best practices, you can actually dramatically improve your training performance in your organization. So don't forget, conduct those needs analyses for every job on your business, in your lot, on your business, at your business. Document your training, and then evaluate the results. With that, it's been another episode of Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.